Okay. Well, I think one of the things that's very most common, and I think a lot of us in the medical profession have a type A personality, is not admitting mistakes or not asking questions. Certainly for a new grad, it's a carry on, right? Like we have 1 year of clinical rotations that we're learning and trying to understand, but here you're practicing as a fully fledged licensed PA. Medicine is ongoing as far as the knowledge base and everything like that. So I think it's up to that mentor, that director, or whoever that supervisor is to give it an open feeling as far as you can ask these questions. You can make mistakes. You can call me. You can text me. And so really setting that tone. So for me, a PA that does not feel comfortable with that, or if they're doing things that I'm unaware of, that's where you start to have issues and things like that. And that's where you start to get concerned about their practice. And is this something future that could be a litigation issue as well? So trying to nip some of those behaviors in the bud is key, and really setting that tone like, hey, this is a team-based approach. Let's have open communication, open dialogue. And really for the new grad, in my impression and opinion and, experience, is these individuals, these PAs, when you're able to knock down that wall between a supervisor and a new grad PA, they appreciate that. They're much more open. They're much more willing. They're much more thankful for that experience.
So we're talking about what not to do, and you're giving some great kind of overall thoughts about areas to avoid. But can you think of some stories of new hires that have come on board and specific examples of things that, man, they shouldn't have really done that, not getting off to a great start?
Yeah. So one of the things I also do is I completely appreciate the ambition. As I said previously on this podcast, I think those individuals looking to see how can they augment or enhance the organization is vital. But I think there's also a cautionary tale as far as getting involved in too much. Certainly I had one PA that I was aware of that got involved in their state organization. They ended up getting involved in their hospital committee, and then they had their job. And so for them, they were constantly letting me know how busy they were, but come to find out it's with things outside of what their work duties were. And so what happened eventually was they burn out. They quit. They couldn't handle it. They started making patient mistakes. They started getting to the point where they had less ability to kind of reflect on some of their experiences with the patients, to where all of a sudden they would get upset. They would get argumentative with the patients because they were burnout. They had too many things. They put too much on their plate right away. So I think one of those cautionary tales is really kind of taking one step at a time. Once you fine tune that job and understand those job duties and understanding that stress level and finding out how you can delegate if you're able to, or share some of those duties, then you can take that next step and take on maybe a committee involvement, a council involvement as well.
So not doing too much too fast.
Yeah. And for me, it's all about work-life balance. That's the one thing that I say is work hard when you're at work and work hard on your family or your personal life when you're at home, and keep those things separate. And that's all that I ask out of those individuals. And so certainly I'm a proponent on avoiding burnout. And so for those people that I can see have the ambition, and, I can look at their resume and see their involvement in multiple things and volunteer events, I also say, hey guys, let's just focus on this within the first 90 days, because most of the time that's the time to where I could let them go. And let's focus on making sure you're doing everything right.
100%. So thinking about, things that they shouldn't do, what comes to mind for me is really maybe their interactions with the interdisciplinary team, right? Because it's the PA, the surgeon, but there's lots of other disciplines that are involved that make up that care team. So any words of caution, things that they shouldn't be doing as it relates to becoming a new member of the team?
I think probably the big thing is, really overselling themselves at that point. I think it's a case where people want to know about them, but I think it's given your background and knowing that you've already got your foot in the door, you're already part of the team, and not taking it to the next step. Especially it's the case to where, that can come off as threatening, somebody who's over ambitious. Certainly we know that there's different personalities, there's different work ethics. And so I think really kind of stepping back and getting an impression of what your work team is and kind of, who can I go and talk to this way? How can I interact with people this way? I think is vital, is really knowing yourself and as well as knowing your team.
What does overly ambitious look like?
Right. So for me, I can say from my own personal experience. So when I left the emergency room and I decided to go into orthopedics, I was blessed. I loved it. I mean, for me, orthopedics, as being originally a fine arts major, it's an art form, right? You come in with a deformed forearm and you're like, oh my gosh, how can I make this look perfect? And you reduce it. You put it in a splint, you put it in a cast, and it looks beautiful when you see it on those post-reduction x-rays. Well, at that time in my institution, I was one of 8 PAs. So in the case where we had a pediatric patient with a both bone forearm fracture, 6 of us would go down there to do the reduction, do the splinting, do the casting. And for me, I was like, hey, I'm here to learn. I want to do this all myself. And I literally said, I want to move to midnights. I want to do 24 and 36-hour shifts. And I want to be able to do it all myself. Well, that came off as, rather threatening and everything like that. Like Ryan doesn't want to be a team player. But for me, it was the way that I had come off, saying I don't need anybody. I can figure this stuff out. When in actuality, I am a team player. I just wanted to be able to learn. It was so how I articulated those things, how I interacted with people, I think was vital. And then I think ultimately it's the case of not being braggadocious. I mean, certainly all of us have different ambitions. Maybe we have the time to go into research things. Maybe we have time to lecture and do research projects. But I think trying to avoid throwing it in other individuals' faces and everything like that, I think that's probably vital as well, as far as not being or coming off-putting to people.